let's take a moment and look at a practical real life application of using the gospel chords play by number system. Let's take a look here at an actual hymn out of a hymn book. And I'm going to tell you how to approach this. Initially in the simplest way. If you're just starting out and you don't want to do a lot of harmonization and you're just new to this, I'm going to tell you how to approach looking at what you see here, this written music as it appears in a hymn book. We see here that this hymn is written in the key of A flat. Now, don't let that be a concern of yours right now, no matter what your level of musical experience is, or if you do play and you don't like the key of A flat, we'll address that issue in a moment. But what I want to show you how to do is how to look and how to approach a piece of music that you probably have never seen before. You see a lot of notes here, and when I see a lot of notes on a piece of paper or music, that scares me because I'm not good at reading notes. But let's reduce this to its most basic elements, and we're going to harmonize this song, and I'm going to show you how to do that. And you do that by looking at the bass note. That's the lowest note on the staff. And you see labeled at position number 1, that note on the very bottom is an A flat. Now, since this is written in the key of A flat, and we know what number A flat is in the A flat scale, the voicing for this is labeled 1. A flat is the first note in the A flat scale, so we're going to play a 1 chord here. And if we just look across that measure, we see that that 1 chord is played for the entire measure. It's not until we get to number 2, position number 2, labeled there in red, that we see that that bottommost note changes. So for that second measure, what that means is that we're going to play a different chord, and to determine what that chord is, we simply look at that lowermost note there at position 2, where that bass note has changed. And we see that that bass note has changed to a D flat. Now, in the A flat scale, what is D flat? D flat is the 4. So we label this with a 4. So we move from the 1 chord to the 4 chord. And we repeat this process throughout. We go across and we see that that 4 chord remains in place for the entire measure. And we go to the next measure and we see that the note has changed to back to an A flat. And we know A flat is the 1 in the key of A flat. So we just have harmonized that entire first line with 1, 4, followed by 1. And if we repeat that process for the second line, we'll have both lines of this song harmonized. And we see there at position number 4, that lowermost note is in A flat. So that's a 1 chord. So we label position 4 with a 1, and we go across that measure, and we see that before we get to the next measure, that bass note changes again. So in this measure, we're actually going to play 2 chords. And that second chord in the measure at position number 5, that chord happens to be what? Look at the note, and we see that that note is an E flat. Now, the E flat in an A flat scale is what note? The E flat is the 4. E flat is the 4th note in the key of A flat. I'm sorry, 5. E flat is the 5th note in the key of A flat. So we label that with a 5. We go to the next measure and we see that the lowermost note at position number 6 is an A flat, and we label that with a 1. A flat is the first note in the key of A flat, and that A flat persists throughout that entire measure. And it's not until we get to position number 7 that we have a new note in the bass. And that note in the bass is a D flat. And in the key of A flat, the D flat is a 4, so we label that with a 4, so we're going to play a 4 chord there. So that's how we should approach any piece of music, is we need to reduce it down to its Roman numerals, and that is the progression for the song. That's not the entire song, but we see here that for this individual song, it is a 1, 4, 1, 1, 5, 1, 4 progression. So those are the chords that we're going to play for this particular song. Now remember, we see that this song is in the key of A flat. One of the benefits of reducing a song down to its Roman numerals is at that point you can play it in any key that you want. So I can say, okay, I don't like the key of A flat, I'm going to play it in D flat because I'm more familiar with the numbers in the key of D flat. So that first chord is going to be a 1 chord in the key of D flat. That's going to be a D flat chord, and the second chord, which is a 4, is going to be what? The 4th note in the D flat scale is G flat, so that's a G flat chord. And the next chord is a 1, which is D flat, and the 5 that we have at position number 5, that's going to be an A flat chord. So by reducing the song down to its Roman numbers, and you being familiar with the number system, you can now play it in your favorite key and not worry about trying to read the music or playing it in a key that you don't like. Now that we've reduced this song down to its Roman numbers, at this point, you can ignore all of the notes on the song here and just play by Roman number. In fact, you can play it in any key that you want. If you don't want to play it in the key of A flat, you can play it in the key of C. So if you were playing this in the key of C, that means if you were playing a 1 chord, the first chord would be a C chord. And the next chord in the song is a 4 chord, so in the key of C, that second chord would be an F chord. So at this point, it's pretty simple to play it in whatever key you feel comfortable with. But just as an example here, I'm going to play it in the key of D flat, even though it's written in the key of A flat. So that is going to tell you right there, I'm not even reading the music that's up there. I'm just looking at the Roman numbers, and I'm going to be able to harmonize this song. In fact, I'm going to do a very simple harmonization. In fact, we've harmonized on the bass, and that's the simplest harmonization that you can do, and it's a good place for beginners to start. It's not going to have that much color or flavor, but it's a good starting point and a good way for me to introduce you to the technique on how to do the harmonization. So right here at position number 1, the first measure, it says use a 1 chord. So at this point, you simply open your book, volume 1, in scale harmonization. You look in that chord reference volume, and you're free to pick out any one of those 1 chords. Go through them, see which ones you like, maybe some of them you don't like, but you are free to pick any one of those chords to harmonize at this point. Like I said, this course is a true adventure. I want you to get used to experimenting and trying different things, listening to different voicings. And this just happens to be the voicings that I picked. You may not like them, but this just happens to be the one that I picked. And for that 1 chord, I picked the voicing number 658, which is a major 9. I'm going to play a 1 major 9, which is a D flat major 9 for that first measure of the song. Like I said, I'm not going to do anything fancy. I'm not here to show off. I'm just going to show you how simple it is to use this technique to get some beautiful chords to harmonize any song. So like I said, in this first measure, I'm going to use chord number 658, which is in that first chapter on harmonizing on the 1, and that it would be a D flat major 9, and that sounds like this. Now the next chord is a 4 chord. So So the fourth in the key of a D flat is what? G flat. So this is going to be a G flat chord, and the chord that I happen to pick is going to be a G flat 13th, which is chord number 316 or 315 in that same chapter on harmonizing on the one. That sounds like this. So let's hear those first two measures together, just so you can just hear. These are very pretty voicings. They're not plain vanilla voicings, and I got them right out of the chapter on harmonizing on the 1 and then the 4. So let's hear the first two measures together. That's harmonizing on the 1 with the D flat major 9, and we move on to that 13. And the next measure just simply goes back to the 1, which you already know. And we come here, we're going to harmonize on the 5, and I just happen to pick chord number 651. The 5 in the key of D flat is A flat, so I picked chord number 651, which is a 9 sus. It's going to be an A flat 9 sus, and that's what this one sounds like. So when we move from that 1 to that 5, it sounds like this. If you don't like those chords, you're free to choose other chords. In fact, for that second chord on the 4, there's another option. You can also choose chord number, or I chose chord number 320, which is also in chapter 1 on harmonizing on that 1 tone, and that happens to be a 13 sus. I'm going to play a G flat 13 sus, and just hear the flavor I get by just switching to another voicing on that 4. So for the 1, I'm going to keep it the same, but on the G flat, I'm going to go back to the 1. So like I said, just by changing the voicing and going to that chapter and harmonizing whatever chord you need to harmonize on, you can give your song lots of flavor. In fact, I can even play a different chord for harmonizing on that 1. I can choose chord number 57. Is a D flat 6-9. This one right here. So I can also choose that one for harmonizing on that first measure. D flat 6-9. Kind of a contemporary sound right there. So like I said, there's lots of choices, and this is kind of like the first step we should take, is just keep it very simple and just harmonize on the bass notes. Let's look at the process of harmonization a little closer. Let's take things to the next level. You already had a very brief introduction on harmonizing on the bass. Let's add a little bit more color to our music and look at harmonizing on the melody. It has been said that most worship and praise music can be harmonized by using just 3 chords: the 1, the 4, and the 5 chord. And I want to explain the theory behind that and how it works. And then we're going to look at an example, and then we're really going to get crazy and look at some real serious chords. The 1, the 4, and 5. So for example, if you were in the key of C, that means whatever you were playing in that key, the matching chords would be the 1, the 4, and the 5 chord of that key. So in the key of C, the 1 chord would be a C chord, the 4 chord would be an F chord, and the 5 chord would be a G chord. And those are the only chords you need to harmonize a song in the key of C. And why is that? Look here at this table of chords. And what you see here are the notes that make up each one of those chords. You should know this by heart with no problem. The golden rule of chords, all major chords consist of the 1, the 3, and the 5. So the notes in a C major chord are C, E, and G. The notes in the 4 chord in the key of C, that would be an F major chord. That would be the 1, 3, and 5 in the key of F. That would be F, A, and C. That's an F major chord. And also the 5 chord, which is a G major chord. And a G major chord is what? The 1, 3, and 5 in the key of G. So that would be G, B, and D. So those are the notes that make up those chords, the 1, the 4, and the 5 chords. Now, if you look at those notes over on the right, you'll notice that those notes cover all of the notes of the major scale. We haven't left out any note. You look, we have a C, a D, an E, an F, a G, an A, and a B. We've covered all the notes of the major scale, so just by using those chords, that's why you can harmonize any song just by using the 1, 4, and 5. Now let's generalize this and take this to the next level. Now we're going to take each one of those notes over on the right, C, D, E, F, G, A, B, and C, and assign them numbers. Now we already know the numbers for these notes. We're in the key of C, so we've assigned them numbers in the C scale. C is note number 1, D is note number 2, E is note number 3, F is note number 4, G is note number 5, A is note number 6, and B is note number 7. And we see we have 2 C's, and that's okay. We're gonna get into what that means in a bit. We also have 2 G's, but we've now assigned numbers to each one of those notes. And we're going to take away the fact that we're going to take away that second column indicating the chord, and we're going to look at this table with just the numbers. So we're going to talk about what it means and what you can do with it. We have now taken the table and simply reduced it down to just numbers so we can apply it in all keys. We know that all of the tones of the major scale are numbered between 1 and major 7. And what this table is telling us is that whenever we're playing a piece of music and we're looking at the melody, and we're, like I say, each one of those tones has a number associated with it. This is telling us that whenever we see a 1, a 3, or a 5 in the melody, we have a choice to play the 1 chord. And it's also telling us in the second row that whenever we see a 4, a 6, or a 1 tone in the melody, we have an option to play a 4 chord. And correspondingly last, whenever we see a 5, a major 7, or a 2 in the melody, we have an option of playing the 5 chord. Now you see, by looking at this table, we have a choice. Whenever we see a 1, we have a choice of either playing a 1 chord or a 4 chord because we see the 1 in both rows, both top rows of this table. And correspondingly, we also have a choice whenever we see a 5 in the melody. We have a choice of playing either a 1 chord or a 5 chord. So say, for example, we're in the key of D flat, and the melody note happens to be, say for example, an A flat. An A flat in the key of D flat is a 5. So in seeing that 5, we have a choice at that point. We can play either a 1 chord, which would be a D flat chord, or we can play a 5 chord, which is an A flat chord. And we're going to see an application of this in just a few moments. In fact, you can use this technique if you just had a series of notes, just a single finger melody. Mary had a little lamb. And all you have to do is just number the notes in any corresponding scale, and you will know what chords to play for that simple single note melody. I'm sure you've all been in your service on Sunday and you heard the musician play all of these beautiful chord transitions in your favorite hymn, and you probably wonder, where are all these beautiful transitions coming from? How do you create them? Because they're surely not written in the music. These transitions I'm going to refer to as passing chords. These passing chords are chords that are played between any two existing chords. So what you're really listening to is this cycle between consonants to dissonance and back to consonant. The passing tones or passing chords that you hear are what is known as dissonance chords. Chords that have a harsh, grinding, gnarly sound. And the consonance chords are the ones that sound kind of friendly and happy. So when you play these passing chords, it's almost as if you're going on a little detour, a little trip before you get to your final destination. And on this little trip, you can play one or more chords, passing chords, until you get to your destination. And that's that little box in the middle called the dissonance part of your trip. And then when you're done, you kind of wind down, come home, be happy, and you play that smooth sound. So, like I said, when you hear, those passing chords, they're on a little detour, a little trip, trying to make things sound sweet. While you are on this detour, playing these passing chords, you need to make sure that the passing chords have dissonance. A chord that is dissonant has what is known as a tension to it, a certain bite that needs to be resolved to something that sounds smooth. Chords that are dissonant, or what makes a chord dissonant, are chords that have certain tones in them. For instance, a chord that has a flat 2, a minor 3, a 4, a flat 5, or a plus 5. As soon as any of those tones are included with a chord, it creates tension and that chord becomes dissonant. There's another way for a chord to become dissonant, and that's by playing a chord in a position that's known as closed harmony. Closed harmony is when you play a chord where the notes are not spread out. The notes are kind of close together. There are different ways to play chords. There are ways that you can play the same chord where you have the notes either close together or spread out, and I'll show you an example of that in a second. So, like I said, one way to create dissonance is to play a chord in closed harmony, where you have notes close together. Like, for example, if you played a chord where you had a C, a D, and an E, all those notes in a row, they're close together. Just by you playing a chord with notes close together like that, you create a tension. Or say you were playing a chord that had a D and an E flat, and the E flat was right next to the D. that's going to create tension. The fact that those two notes are too close together, as opposed to you playing the D and the E flat spread apart. And like I said, the other way to create dissonance is to play a chord that has one of those accidentals in it. Now, on the other hand, when a chord has consonants, it doesn't have any accidentals. It usually has the tones 1, 2, 3, 5, 6, 7, or major 7. So as long as your chord has those tones in it, it's usually considered a chord that has consonants or has a smooth sound. The other way to create consonants is to play a chord in open harmony. That means when you're playing the chord, make sure the notes are as spread apart as you can get them. Like, don't play a D right next to an E flat or a D right next to a D flat. Spread it out. Spread it out over the distance of an octave so that they're wide apart. Just by doing that, even though a chord may have some of the tones that you may call it a dissonant chord, by just rearranging how you play the notes and spread them out, it causes the chord to have less dissonance and almost become consonant. So let's take a look at the big picture here. Normally when you're playing a song, normally there are no passing chords, so you're just playing consonants or chords that have minimal accidentals. It's not till you take this detour where you play these passing chords that have this tension or dissonance. And this dissonance, remember, it needs to be resolved. When you play these tones, a flat 2, a minor 3, a 4, a flat 5, or a plus 5, those tones create that tension that it's an instability in the chord. And the chord really wants to resolve and remove that tension. Like, for example, that minor 3 doesn't want to be there. It wants to resolve to just a plain 3. The flat 5 doesn't want to be there. It wants to be just a plain 5. So that tension needs to be resolved. And as you resolve the tension as you play, you come back to the position of consonance. So what you're hearing again in your Sunday service, when you hear all those beautiful transitions in passing chords, you're hearing that cycle between consonants, the detour to dissonance, and back to consonant. You're hearing that cycle go round and round. Now what you need to do is now you're going to pick passing chords. And the thing you need to remember in choosing a chord that's going to be a passing chord, you need to make sure that it has closed harmony or it has one of the accidentals that I just mentioned. If it doesn't meet those requirements, it's not going to fit as a passing chord.